Okay, so for this one, I've sort of touched on it in the past, but just a bit to reiterate is how existence itself is a paradox. Neither mass nor energy can be created nor destroyed, so whether by God or by Big Bang, let's start with Big Bang first though. If the Big Bang happened, where did the mass and energy that sort of collided together before the explosion come from? That still doesn't explain everything. There are still bits missing that are fairly important. Now, with the existence of a god, the obvious question would be, where did that god come from? And if that god was created, where did what created that god come from, and so on and so forth. I've already dealt with this, but another thing isn't just the paradox of existence, but the paradox of existing. Ergo cogito sum, I believe. I think, therefore I am, and if. It's difficult to tell from another person, but for me, I think, therefore I am, I perceive, and I comprehend right now in this moment, so how could I possibly stop? I am existing right now, I am perceiving, I am comprehending, I am doing right now, so I see it, feel it, so how exactly could I just cease? Yet I suppose that's what sleeping is, briefly. But attempting to comprehend a mass amount of something is difficult in itself, but then when you attempt to comprehend nothing at all, that just seems even more impossible. Actually, impossible. You can't comprehend nothing because there is nothing to comprehend. You just stop. And that's it. But again, if I am, as I am, amming, or whatever, then how does stopping make sense? I mean, it doesn't. And it never will. But, again, there's no point in worrying about that. Something else I want to touch on, though, is how purpose and meaning is relative. Death is more meaningless than life. While there are technically some objective truths about life and even existence, purpose and meaning is relative. One's purpose and meaning must be put in relation to what they are capable of, whether due to themselves as well as their environment. Their potential, and you can also put it in relation to their potential, what they're capable of, as well as personal interest, since that has an influence on what someone would be willing to do. A person's purpose in life can only truly be determined by themselves. Even if they take on the purpose another has suggested or told them, that is still their choice. But with a bee has a purpose which is determined by its relation to its environment. That meaning its impact on the environment, and the environment's impact on it. A honeybee not only gathers sources for its hive, but as it travels back from a flower, the pollen stuck to it falls off as it flies, seeding other flowers. you didn't know, pollen is plant sperm. You're welcome. Without the bee, farming, cultivation, and plant life would be very different. So in this sense, a bee's purpose is to help the plants grow. Hold on. I think even Albert Einstein said that without the bee, humanity and possibly the whole world would eventually just could eventually just collapse. Many predators share similar purpose to each other, to keep the populations of herbivores in check, and the purpose of an herbivore is to keep the plants in check. Non-Yverlunder animals, however, do not think about purpose, nor do I think they can. They just simply exist. They just are, just as existence is. Humans, however, have Yverlunder, and we can't just get rid of that. So it is not easy for many of them to just be, as they begin craving greater purpose. Since purpose is relative to one's potential as well as environment, to become to die, which is to become nothing, and would be to strip oneself of any potential meaning. To die is to become nothing, to be nothing is to have nothing to be put in relation to, or have anything to be put in relation to you, thus being devoid of any purpose, any potential for purpose. Since strip oneself of any potential meaning. The meaningless of death, and choosing death, is primarily meaningless of the mind. Primarily meaningless of the mind and thought, but also the body. The body still decomposes and serves to provide energy to decomposers. The purpose of all life is essentially just to live, and on a broader, less individual scale, to reproduce. In order to live, different species and environments have to have ways of balancing each other. That is also their purpose. That is why the creatures of today are the way they are. Which again, goes back into evolution and adaptability. Now that's where my notes have ended. But again, going back to the bee, because of what it has evolved to do, shaped by its environment, its purpose has become to serve as a cultivator, even though it's not intentional. But again, not even apes or monkeys really have the Yverlunder. And if you haven't seen my previous videos, Yverlunder it essentially just means a more universal way to describe the heightened sentience, intelligence, awareness, thinking, and perhaps even emotions that a human has. But to call something Yverlunder is specifically an adjective of the mind and the mind's ability. So, say if alien civilizations exist, and their minds are somewhat as advanced as ours, or even more so, they would also be Yverlunder. So that is what Yverlunder means. Now, predators will have more purpose than could have more purpose than to just balance out the populations of herbivores as even some, because again, in the end, all life has a purpose in its end, which is to provide energy for decomposers. Now, these purposes are not necessarily intentional. There is no greater being that determined this. Again, adaptability and evolution is the direction of evolution is essentially determined just by whatever works, whatever the best way to allow a creature to live long enough to survive and reproduce in its environment, as well as how it interacts with not only the environment, but the other creatures within the environment. Plant and animal. Now, going back on how to, I guess not back, but now I suppose we can take a little time to discuss how you can find your own purpose. As purpose is relative, and interest can serve as a start for motivation to discipline. You can take what you are interested as well as what you are good at and see what professional fields relate to such interests and skills that you already have. If you're not necessarily a very active person, but you sort of enjoy the act of typing, learning, problem solving, well, there are a variety of different fields you could go here, but one could be coding. If you enjoy doing something with your hands, but also the act of creating something, then there's pottery, carpentry, blacksmithing. Now, being a leader could also serve as a purpose. I suppose in this day and age it's an oxymoron, but a good CEO, right? A good CEO, hypothetically, a good CEO would essentially serve as a moderator for the workers. The CEO's purpose would be to make sure everything stays on track and nothing gets out of hand. Business can continue to make important decisions when drastic change occurs. And with the relation to everything, each species is necessary. Even the ones we don't care for, such as mosquitoes, they still have an important purpose, which is to serve as food for other creatures, such as spiders. And also bats, I believe. Even some birds, and birds, it really depends on the species of bird. But some birds that eat insects may also eat... Okay. Sort of said everything I have on my mind at this point, but there's still time left on the gameplay recording, so I'm seeing what else I can say. Again, as usual, if anyone sees this, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I guess not here, but I'd like to see what thoughts you have on what I'm talking about in the comments below. As, again, multiple perspectives on a topic help to better find truth as well as the best direction. I'm also just curious. Maybe I'll get into what I've decided my purpose to be someday. As of right now, I suppose I could say it's to be a teacher and a guide. Now, in some ways, I suppose it's as if I'm trying to convince other people, but I don't mean to come off that way. Right now, I'm just saying my thoughts on topics as of right now. And I'd like other perspectives as well to better find answers. Now, the next, suppose I have time to talk about what the next video will be, and it'll be about the ULTRAKILL's Lust level sheer heart attack mission. The secret level, specifically, which I feel pretty much summarizes some of my philosophical beliefs, which is interesting, and I actually didn't expect to find that. So my next video will be me just reading that out. I'll just let the rest play out for now. Thank you again for watching, if you've made it this far. And I ask you to say your comments in below, view some of my older content, and perhaps even come back in the future. Goodbye, for now.